My younger sister scanned me from head to toe, a wicked grin spreading across her face before she quipped, "Still no ring on that finger? How sad." My ex-husband didn't bother hiding his contempt as he added, "Wow, looking just as pathetic as I remember." They strolled into our family home like triumphant conquerors, ready to mock me 3 years after they had torn my world apart. My pulse pounded violently in my ears. But just as I opened my mouth to respond, my father rose slowly from his seat at the head of the dining table. The room fell into a suffocating hush. He cleared his throat, fixing them both with a steely gaze, and announced, "Perfect timing. I have a rather significant announcement to make." Instantly, their smug expressions crumbled into ashen dread, replaced by a terror they never saw coming. They had walked right into a carefully laid plan. "My name is Clara Reynolds, and I'm 34 years old. For 3 agonizing years, I existed in the shadow of a treachery so profound it nearly destroyed me. It was 3 years ago that my life imploded. I returned home early from a work trip, carrying dinner for what was meant to be a peaceful evening with my husband, Daniel. Instead, I discovered him in our master bedroom entwined with my own flesh and blood, my sister, Bethany. There were no apologies, no shame, just a chilling, calculated indifference. Within 2 days, Daniel had initiated divorce proceedings, draining our joint accounts to finance a lavish vacation with Bethany. They didn't just shatter my heart. They seemed to relish parading their betrayal, broadcasting their tropical holiday photos for the entire family to see. Bethany sent me a final text message before blocking my number. "Some women just know how to hold on to a man, Clara. Don't take it as a personal failing." I was left with an empty house, a broken spirit, and a pile of legal fees. Everyone anticipated I would simply fall apart. For the first few months, I barely left my room, seeking refuge in the quiet comfort of my parents' home. But while the world believed I was nursing my wounds in isolation, my father and I were secretly constructing a completely different future. I dedicated those 3 years to rebuilding my existence from the rubble, piece by piece, patiently waiting for the moment the dust would settle. The summons came on a dreary Thursday afternoon. My mother's voice was strained on the phone. "Clara, honey, Bethany called your father," she said delicately. "She and Daniel are back in town. They want to come over for Sunday dinner. She claims it's time to make amends and reconnect with the family." Make amends? The sheer gall of it made my blood boil. After 3 years of utter silence, after stealing my husband and mocking my pain, she wanted to waltz back into our lives as if she'd just returned from a long holiday. My immediate instinct was to refuse. I told my father I would leave and stay in a hotel for the weekend. I had no intention of sitting at a family table pretending that years of anguish could be swept away with small talk and roast chicken. But my father placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his eyes holding a sharp, quiet resolve that instantly calmed my nerves. "No, Clara," he said, his voice low and unyielding. "You stay right here. You've been concealing your power for far too long. It's time they see exactly who you've become." So, I stayed. And when Sunday evening came, I watched from the living room window as a high-end luxury sports car pulled into the driveway. The storm had arrived. The front door swung open, and Bethany and Daniel entered, their arrogance palpable. Bethany strode into the foyer in a designer dress that screamed wealth, her wrists covered in diamond bracelets. Daniel followed close behind, swaggering into my parents' home with his hands shoved in his tailored pants, surveying the room as if he already owned it. They didn't look ashamed. They looked like victors returning to claim their prize. The instant Bethany spotted me near the kitchen counter, her face twisted into a nasty, condescending smirk. She didn't offer a hug or even a simple greeting. Instead, she stepped closer, gave me a slow, dismissive once-over, and sneered. "Still single? LOL." Before I could even process the insult, Daniel let out a harsh, cruel laugh. He shook his head, staring at me with pure disdain. "Hey, ugly. Still the same old mess," he interjected, leaning smugly against the doorway. "I see you haven't upgraded your wardrobe or your pathetic life since I left." My heart hammered against my ribs. The viciousness of their words cut through the hallway. They had spent 3 years basking in their stolen happiness, and they expected me to shrink away just like I used to. My mother went pale, frozen in shock. But my father, seated calmly at the dining table, didn't even blink. He just observed them, his face an unreadable mask. A heavy silence descended, thick with the toxic arrogance Bethany and Daniel had brought with them. They stood there, smirking at each other, certain their cheap barbs had reduced me back to the weeping wreck I was 3 years ago. They had arrived expecting to gloat, expecting to parade their wealth and subtly inquire about the family trust they assumed was theirs for the taking. Then my father slowly rose from his chair at the head of the table. He didn't shout, nor did he show a hint of anger. He simply pushed his chair back, the harsh screech against the hardwood floor cutting through the room like a blade. The entire house fell deathly quiet. He straightened his tie, locked eyes with them, and said, "Excellent timing. I have something incredibly important to tell you." In that instant, the smugness vanished from their faces. Bethany blinked, her arrogance dissolving into unease, while Daniel yanked his hands from his pockets, suddenly shifting his weight nervously. "You both entered my house boasting about your achievements, strutting around like you've won at life," my father continued, his voice steady and commanding. "You think you're superior, looking down on Clara, but you've made a catastrophic miscalculation. You assumed that while you were off playing house with stolen money, time stood still here. You assumed the family business and everything linked to it would be waiting for you when you deigned to return." My father paused, reaching into his jacket, his gaze fixed on Daniel's rapidly paling face. He produced a thick manila folder and placed it flat on the dining table. The heavy thud of the papers echoed ominously in the quiet room. "3 years ago, when you two decided to betray this family for your own selfish greed," my father declared, his voice dropping to a powerful whisper, "you thought you left Clara with nothing. You believed she was weak. You assumed she'd spend her life wallowing in the dirt you left her in. But while you were squandering your integrity, Clara was working." Daniel's brow furrowed in a tight scowl. "What are you talking about?" "She was just sitting here feeling sorry for herself." "No, Daniel," my father shot back sharply. "She was saving this family's legacy. 2 years ago, I officially retired from the family corporation. I didn't hand control to a board of directors, and I certainly didn't reserve a single share for you, Bethany." Bethany's jaw dropped, her diamond-laden wrist freezing midair. "Dad, what do you mean?" "It means that Clara is the sole CEO and majority shareholder of Reynolds Industries," my father stated, tapping the documents on the table. "Every asset, every commercial property, and every patent this family has built over 30 years has been legally transferred into her name. She isn't living off my goodwill. She runs the entire empire. And this house? The deed was transferred to Clara 6 months ago. You are standing in her living room, eating off her table." Bethany gasped, clutching her designer purse against her chest as if it could shield her from the sudden upheaval. Daniel's face drained of all color. The arrogant man who had swaggered in treating me like a failure was now staring at the woman who held absolute financial power over everything he had ever wanted. My father looked at them both with icy finality. "You didn't return to make peace. You came back to feed off what you assumed was yours. But as of this moment, you are officially and permanently removed from the family trust." The silence that followed was unbearable. The air rushed out of Daniel's lungs in a ragged gasp as the last vestiges of color fled his face. "Clara, CEO." Daniel stammered, his eyes darting wildly between my father and me. The arrogance that had dripped from his voice mere minutes ago had vanished, replaced by stark, naked panic. "No, that's impossible. You're running Reynolds Industries." "For over 2 years now, Daniel," I said calmly, finally speaking. I folded my hands on the table and met his panicked gaze. "And that brings us to your little consulting firm, Zenith Partners." Daniel froze, his hands beginning to tremble visibly. "You didn't come back tonight just to mock me," I continued, allowing a cold smile to touch my lips. "You came back because Zenith Partners is teetering on the edge of collapse. You've been desperately searching for a primary investor to back your $4 million credit line, haven't you? You thought you were going to pitch my father tonight." Bethany whipped her head toward Daniel, horror dawning on her face. "Daniel, what is she talking about?" "You told me your business was booming." "Shut up, Bethany." Daniel snapped, his composure completely crumbling. He took a frantic step toward the table, clutching the back of a dining chair as if to steady himself. "Clara, please. The investment board told me the funding was approved by a parent holdings group. They said the final signature was happening this week." "The parent holdings group is a subsidiary of Reynolds Industries," I interrupted softly. "The contract is sitting on my desk right now. I was scheduled to sign it on Monday morning." Daniel sank into the chair, burying his face in his trembling hands. "Clara, please, if you don't sign that approval, my creditors will seize everything I own by the end of the month. We'll lose the house, the cars, everything. Please, I'm begging you. We're family." "Family," I echoed, my voice sharp as steel. You stopped being family the moment you walked out that door 3 years ago. I stood up from the table, gazing down at the two people who had spent 3 years convinced they had destroyed me. Daniel sat crumpled in the chair, a broken man drowning in the consequences of his own greed, while Bethany sobbed hysterically, realizing her life of luxury was evaporating before her eyes. You asked me if I was still single, Bethany, I said, my voice ringing clear and steady through the quiet room. The answer is yes. But unlike you, I am independent, secure, and accountable to no one. You traded your self-respect for a man who is now completely bankrupt. And Daniel, you traded a devoted wife for a lifestyle you could never actually afford. You two are a perfect match. I pointed to the front door. Now get out of my house. They didn't argue. They slunk out into the cool night air, leaving behind the shattered remains of their arrogant delusion. Within a month, Zenith Partners collapsed under the weight of its debts. Daniel lost his sports car, their rented mansion, and his reputation, while Bethany ended up moving into a cramped studio apartment, working double shifts just to manage her credit card bills. As predicted, their affair didn't survive the financial ruin. As for me, I solidified the groundwork for financial justice, expanded Reynolds Industries nationwide, and finally discovered true peace. The best revenge is not revenge at all, it's a life so full they have no place in it. Karma doesn't always arrive on your preferred schedule, but when it finally appears, it delivers a complete, perfect, and uncompromising justice. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to Zarabell Stories for more narratives that will keep you on the edge of your seat.